even know really if there's any purpose for me being over here. I don't know what the hell I'm gonna do. So I take it out for a few minutes just to make sure it doesn't break.
Well, that's up to you. I mean, I might be able to be a little more free speaking since I'll be a little camera shy doing this part of it.
If I'm not here?
Yeah, maybe we'll just try and see what happens.
Alright. Well, holler at me if a little red light goes off.
I'll do it.
Other than that, go for it.
All right. Let's see what happens. All right. As part of the tutorial, we're going to discuss the item selector dialog. The item selector is a very important role in using the software because it does handle all the file handling capabilities that we need to use. Saving jobs, opening jobs, importing graphics, bringing up logos, installing fonts, all require the use of the item selector dialog. Now the reason this is part of the tutorial is because it's one of the major topics of discussion in customer service. So bear with us. It's not going to be the most exciting part of the tutorial. It's not going to be something you're going to really be interested in, but it is a necessity. For you to feel comfortable saving your jobs and be able to retrieve them and find things efficiently, you need to have a good understanding of what the item selector does for you. Now before we get into talking about the actual dialog itself, we need to discuss the different components of what the item selector addresses. In other words, what is a file? What is a disk? What is a subdirectory? How do they play a part on your computer? So we're going to kind of use some other abstract objects, or actually concrete objects, to describe exactly some comparisons that might make sense in the real world, so you can understand where these files go. They're not just some magical place that they exist. For the hard drive, we can compare the hard drive basically to a filing cabinet. And a filing cabinet is where we typically store documents. These documents, if not stored systematically, are just going to be haphazardly thrown into the cabinet. If you went to go look for that document later on, it'd be difficult to find it. You'd have to search through and sift through. There would be any organization, but also it'd be hard to find the document very efficiently. So within a filing cabinet, we have drawers. When you break down a drawer, you can then label that drawer and perhaps break it down further into folders. And inside each of these folders, we then can actually put documents. So you could label one for your jobs, label one for your logos, label one for your fonts. So if you did have to go look and research and find a file, or in this case a document, you could narrow it down to a certain drawer within a certain filing cabinet and then further narrow it down to a file folder. And within that file folder, maybe you'd have things alphabetized, such as the way files are saved on your hard drive. It's automatically alphabetized. So this is kind of the correlation. If you can get that picture in your head, we can get on with the item selector and talk about exactly how you go about saving and opening files. All right, first thing you need to do is when you get into the item selector, is ask yourself some basic questions. And that first question is going to be, what type of operation am I trying to perform? And the rhetorical answer here for yourself would be, am I opening, am I saving, am I bringing in a logo, etc. The item selector dialog will look identical for the most part when operating on different files within Xenetech, whether it's jobs, fonts, or logos. It's the same dialog box. That graphical box on your screen will look identical on the screen. It's only going to have some subtle differences like the title and the file type that you could choose within the dialog depending upon the operation. Now there's a confirmation. Whenever you choose that operation you're trying to perform, there's little hints like the file type extensions. If you're doing a job open or a job save, the Xenetech software saves XOT type jobs, or type files I should say. The XOT is the 3-character suffix added to the end of a file that typically designates the type of file it is. And when you're doing the file save or file open, you'll see the XOT at the end of the file in the file name box, as well as down at the bottom in the list files of type. It's always a good hint, it's a good clue as to whether you're doing the correct operation. Common mistakes people make is they try to open a logo. And a logo has the XLG extension. XLG stands for Xenetech logo. XLGs are not openable. You can't open them using file open. You have to use a different function to open them, to bring a logo on the screen. You actually open it, you're placing a logo. So these little hints, these little subtleties, these file extensions become a very important part of understanding where you are in the correct location of choosing the proper operation in the item selector dialog. All right. The next question you should ask yourself when saving a file or loading a file is, which disk do I wish to save to or load from? In a computer, typically you have a hard drive and a floppy drive, maybe a CD-ROM, etc. And typically your software is going to be installed on your hard drive, which is usually designated as the C drive. Your floppy drives, if you have two floppy drives, are going to be the A and the B drive. If you only have one floppy drive, it'll typically be the A drive. And that's pretty much standard. If you have a different configuration for your computer, it won't be far different. You may have a D drive as an additional hard drive in your computer or a partition. But we'll use A and C here for our examples, for the A being the floppy drive and C being the hard drive. So when you ask yourself, where am I going to open and load this job, you need to look for the drives box in the item selector dialog. And in that drives box, you'll have a pull down, that little down arrow you can click on, that will display all the currently available drives to you. And for this example we're going to stay on the C drive, which is the hard drive. That is the standard location that we recommend you do save your files to. Okay, once you've chosen a disk drive, C in this case, the next question is, which directory do I wish to save in? Is it going to be the X files directory? Is it going to be in the Windows directory? Is it going to be in the root directory, which is the base C drive directory? And typically, in our system, we have specific directories that we have defined for each file type. For job saves, we have the XOT directory. For logos, we have the XLG directory. For fonts, we have the FNT directory. Now, all the three above mentioned types of files are all Xenetech files. And for that matter, we've made a specific subdirectory to keep all those three subdirectories in called X files. So the X files directory is a catch-all. It's the major drawer in our filing system, in our filing cabinet. So X files would be a drawer, and within that drawer, we have an XOT folder, an XLG folder, and an FNT folder. So it further breaks down. So we have a subdirectory within a subdirectory, just like we have a file folder within a drawer, within a cabinet. And the cabinet again represents the C drive. All right, lastly, when you're saving or opening a file or loading a file, you need to know what the name of it is. It makes pretty good sense, and typically in the conventions we're using, you're limited to 8 characters. In some Windows 95 applications, you have the ability to use more, and eventually you'll see that in Xenetech, but currently you're limited to 8 characters. The suffix, the 3-digit extension, at the end of a file name is typically added by Xenetech automatically. So if you were opening a job, and the name of that job was job 1, period XOT, where the period separates the suffix from the prefix, the XOT is not necessary to type in. Xenetech automatically adds that in. And as long as you're doing a file open and you choose the XOT, as far as the file type you're operating on, open works fine. Open also does operations on the JOBs, which is a dog and job load. And again, these are things you need to become familiar with as far as the 3-digit extensions. All right, let's see. Okay, that's about it. We'll go over this, Fritz. Stumble in a few places. I think we can review it, refine it, see what my facial expressions. I feel like I got like kind of a down on my face, but that can be arranged, that can be changed. So I'm going to try to stop this thing and I'll come get you. See you later.
See which way you want to go, what it is you don't know.
Using keyboard.
Do you want me to stay in here or not?
Don't matter.
Well, I mean, sometimes it's easier if you've got somebody in the room so you can talk to a person rather than just the camera. But if it doesn't make a difference to you, I got shit to do.
Well, I can do it myself.
Okay.
That's fine.
All right, little red light's on. As long as it doesn't go off, you're
Oh,
cool.
I've been recording all this already? Jeez.
Yeah.
Okay.
Let me make sure it's actually the microphone's actually pointed at you.
Let's talk really loud, or is this okay?
No, it's gonna pick it up no matter what. Yeah, that's fine. Normal speaking voice.
Shoot, so like if I pick my nose, you're gonna know it, huh?
Yeah. Holler at me when you're done and we'll look over it.
Okay. All right, well, now that you've seen how easy it is to create a single plate job, now I'm going to show you how to create a batch and multiple plate job. Mainly the difference between a batch and a multiple job would be that you, with batch jobs, you're doing one plate at a time, taking that one plate and putting it in the engraving machine, having it engraved, removing that plate, and then putting another one in. Multiple plate job, you would take one large piece of material, put it in the machine, and engrave smaller plates on that large plate, effectively creating a matrix of plates. The obvious benefits to doing multiple plate would be that you could set the machine up with a whole lot of plates on it and leave the machine, let it engrave while you're doing something else. So, well, let's get started. First, we'll go ahead and do a multiple plate job. Go to the File menu, click on New. At that point, you will get the Workspace Management screen. And here, for this example, we're going to do a name tag job. So I'm going to set up a 1 inch by 3 inch wide single plate, and then let's just say that my multiple plate size is going to be 12 inches by 12 inches, and I'll enter that in down here. Once you enter those values in, go ahead and click on the OK button, and when your screen comes back up, you're going to be in basically what I call the single plate mode, where you're looking at the one plate. The difference being is that if you were to go to, say, the page menu and click on full view, you would actually see the full size of your master sheet, which is the 12 inches by 12 inches. But for right now, I'm going to zoom back in so you can see it pretty well. So I'm going to click on normal view. At this point, let's go ahead and go into text mode, and to do that, just hit the enter key. And we'll just type in plate number 1. Okay. I'm going to hit the F8 key to evenly space my lines, which is only one line of plate, so it should center itself. Okay, now we got that plate on there. Now what I want to do is I want to go ahead and create a second, and third, and fourth plate. One note that I should make at this point is that if you want to actually have the machine cut out the plates for you, what you should do now is go and turn on the grid cutout in the plate menu. Click that on. Now you won't see any visual representation of that on the screen, but it is on. And the main thing for that is, especially in this case here, you have a 1 by 3 plate on a 12-inch master. Okay, that would mean normally that you would get 4 plates across the top of the master plate. But because you turn grid cutout on and we have the margin set to a 1/4 inch for our grid cutout, you're actually going to lose a 1/2 inch, which now means you're only going to be able to get 3 plates across the top. And you're also only going to be able to get 11 plates up and down. So to go to our next plate, what we can do is hit the page down key, which automatically creates another plate for you. Put your cursor on that line of text. Now you can either leave the text as it is, or you can hit the escape key, which will erase the text, and type in a new line. Now, at this point, you can hit F8 again to center your lines, but if you're going to continue on, that's not necessary. Just hit the page down key again to create your third plate, and it automatically centers itself for you, so that's just one less keystroke that you have to do. Now we have actually 3 plates. Let's actually see them all at one time. We could do that by going to the page menu and clicking on full view, and now you'll see that you have 3 plates on your job. I can continue to hit page down, creating more and more plates, as you see here. I can also, if all my plates are the same, I can also go up to the edit menu and click on copy plate and enter the number of copies that I'd actually like to produce. So we'll just add another 10 to this, and you'll see that it creates this for me automatically. Now let's go ahead and save this job, and we'll just call it multi-plate. Now we'll see how much I missed. Okay. For editing purposes, there's a couple of hotkeys that I can tell you about to move up and down within the multi-plate job. Because, you know, if you had 100 plates on this one job, you wouldn't have to want to keep hitting page up until you got to the one you want to go to. So one thing that you can do is you can do a control page up, which will bring you to the very first plate in the job, or do a control page down, which will bring you down to the very last plate in the job. Also, already, as I've shown you, page up and page down will take you back and forth between the plates. You can also go to the edit menu and click on go to plate number if you know the number of your plate, and just type that in and it'll automatically take you to that plate. Let's see. We can also change plates within the job. In other words, you know, change the number of lines on a plate and continue on. I'm going to go ahead and create another plate here with more than one line on it. And what we can do is I can select the line either by clicking on it or hitting the F6 key, which is the hotkey. Now, if I hit F6, it'll select all the lines on the plate. So usually you just want to click on the line, or you could hit the plus key until it highlighted the line that you wanted to edit. I want to duplicate that line, so I'm going to hit the F5 key, which is also underneath the edit menu. Click on duplicate line. Okay, and I'm going to hit F8 again to evenly space it. And even spacing is found under the plate menu. And I'm going to change the second line of text to 1/8 inch letters. So I'm going to click on my height and type in 0.125. And now I'm going to select my other line by pressing on the plus key on the numeric keypad, and I'm going to change that to a 1/4 inch high letter. I'm going to hit F8 again for even spacing, and now I have a new tag with 2 lines on it. You're not limited by any means by how many lines you can put on each plate in the multiple jobs. So you can have completely different jobs or completely different layouts on different plates on the job and still engrave them. Okay, now we're going to go ahead and do a batch plate job. I'm going to go to the File menu and click on New. And I'm going to set up my plate jobs again, staying with my 1x3 name tag. And this time, the main difference here is setting up the multi-plate size. The multi-plate size should be the same size as your single plate. Okay. Once you do that, it goes into batch plate mode, and to see that, you can look down to the bottom of your screen where your status line is, and it'll say batch 1 of 1. I'll go ahead and set up my letter height to 1/4 inch by clicking on height, typing in 0.250. Now that's my default letter height. I'm also going to put a default left and right margin in of 1/4 inch. I'm going to type in 0.250 for left margin, and then I'm going to hit the down arrow key to get to my right margin and type in 0.25 there as well. Once I've done that, I'll hit the enter key. I'll go ahead and go into text mode by hitting the enter key again, and I'm going to type in our company name. Once I've typed that in, I'll hit enter, and then I'm going to type in my name. And then I will hit the F8 key to evenly space everything on my plate. Now, what I'm going to do here is I want my name to be bigger than the company name, so I'm going to slightly lessen the height of my company name by, let's say, 50 thousandths. So I'll type in 0.200, which will reduce the size of my company name. I'll hit F8 again to evenly space everything, and there I have a name tag.
Things cold better than I do warm.
Yeah,
You
I'm the same way.
You recording this?
No, this is just so you can see what you did and go back and look at it and decide what you want to change.
Good.
All right.
Let's get 'em hot.
You're right.
We're ready now to start creating our first jobs. If you look at the Xenetech screen, the Xenetech icon here, we double click on it, and that will bring up the Xenetech workspace. At this time, it's time to set up our first jobs. And we'll do that by selecting the F7 or size plate workspace choice, which allows us to change our plate size. If we do that, it opens up the workspace management dialog. At this time, we want to change our plate size to be 6 inches high by 6 inches wide. You'll notice that the 11 here on the screen is in dark blue, and all the other numbers are on a white background. The dark blue is where our focus is. You can also see the flicking cursor here. This also means, this dark blue area that the white lettering is on, that if I type, it will replace what's in the blue. Type in a 6. At this point, we want to move down to the next cursor, to the next position. Press the tab. The tab button will move you down to where it says width. Now this is the width of the single plate we're going to work on. Type in a 6 again. Press tab again. This brings us down to the size of the multiple plate. We're not going to be doing a multiple plate, so at this point we want to change this size to be at least as small as the single size plate. Xenetech will convert this from any number you type in smaller to 6. And if we type in a 1 here and tab and a 1 here and tab in our height and width, this will then convert to 6 and 6 when we press the enter key or click on the OK button. Go ahead and click on the OK button. Now we have to set a letter height to work in. This part of the screen is called the toolkit. The second item down in the toolkit is called letter height. Click where it says letter height. When you do that, you'll notice that there's a small highlight box all the way around this area, but you input down here at the bottom. As you can see where the mouse is here, this is asking for the input. At this time, we want to use a 0.35 letter height. So type in period 35. Press the enter key. You'll notice that here in the letter height field, it has now changed to read 0.35, which is in inches. To keep the first part of this tutorial simple, we're going to use the Gothic font for the type style. So if we open the font menu, we already have Gothic loaded. The check mark next to it signifies that it is the current loaded font, is the current font for the system. Cup of coffee. Since this is our default font, we don't need to do anything. Now it's time for us to start entering some text. To make things simple, Xenetech mimics many word processing conventions, so people who know how to use word processors should feel right at home here. To get into the text mode, we have two ways of doing it. By far the easiest way to get into the text mode is to press the enter key, but you can also, if you care to, click on the T icon, which stands for text. In this case, I prefer to press enter. Notice that here on the icon bar, the T has reversed so that the background is darker and the foreground is lighter. The T is white now. Now it's time for us to add text to the plate. So type in my first plate using upper and lower case. My first plate. Press the enter key to create a new line. Notice that when you did that, the cursor has moved down a convenient amount and is waiting for you to input more text. So type in using Xenetech. Xenetech has a variety of formatting tools designed to make job layouts easy. Probably one of the most common tools is plate even spacing. This feature simply even spaces all lines on the plate vertically, either with 2 mouse clicks or the press of a single button. We will use this tool next to the center. We will use this tool next to center the 2 lines on the plate. If we look here in the plate menu, we have even spacing. If you click there, notice now that the system is no longer in the text mode, we're in the pointer mode, and that the text has moved to the center of the plate and is spaced proportionally from the top to the bottom. Now, wasn't that easy? Nothing to it, right? Now that the job is laid out, let's save it and output for our final product. And by saving it, I mean we're going to save this as a Xenetech job on the hard drive. Xenetech uses the extension XOT for job saves. So to do this, to save your work, click on File and move your mouse down to Save As. Notice that the hotkey for Save As is F4. Confirm that your directory is for the X-Files XOT directory. Xenetech uses a major subdirectory called X-Files, and many smaller directories are sub to that for fonts, logos, and jobs. Now type in here where the highlight bar is, first job. Press the enter key. Pressing the enter key takes the OK button as the default, that's the heavier border around it, and we'll save the job. That was quick, but that Xenetech saves the jobs very quickly. To confirm that it has done a job save, you can look here at the status bar at the top of the screen, and you'll notice that it gives the full path for the job. CX files, XOT, first job, period, XOT. You'll notice the generic form of the above box is the item selector dialog. What this basically means is that this dialog box, or dialog for short, is used in any file handling situation within Xenetech. Saving or opening jobs, installing additional fonts, importing graphics, loading logos, etc. All use this common dialog to access the location, drive and directory, file type, jobs, fonts, logos, bitmaps, graphics, etc., and file name. The overall layout of this dialog will appear the same during any of the above operations. The name of the function being performed will be displayed in the top left corner of the dialog to distinguish among the different file handling operations. In this case, you see we are using the item selector dialog to save a Xenetech job as a given file name. Because file handling, saving and opening, etc., play a very important part of any computer program, it is highly recommended that you become very comfortable with the use of this dialog. And as I've pointed out, you can confirm that your job has been saved by looking at the top of the screen, and it gives you your full complete path. If your job does not appear at the top, or the name is different than what you think it should be, then one of two things happened. Either the job was not saved, you typed in a different name than you thought, or you inadvertently clicked on the cancel instead of the OK. It is important to get into the habit of checking the title bar until you become comfortable using the item selector dialog for manipulating files. Three important pieces of information are found within the title bar: the drive designator, the directory or path, and the file name. In this example, the drive is C. The directory on the C drive in which the file was saved is \xfiles\xot, and the file name is firstjob.xot. The words directory and path are and will be used interchangeably throughout this tutorial as well as other Xenetech documentation. A directory is a segmented location on a disk drive used to help organize information instead of piling it all up in one location. \xfiles\xot is referred to as either the directory or the path. Now it's time for us to choose and set up our output device. The on-screen job you have created can now be engraved, mechanical or laser, and it can be printed. It is simply a matter of choosing the correct device to output to. To engrave on a mechanical engraver, we will choose File, Menu, to Engraver. Laser engraving and printing are handled using the File menu, Output to Printer, then choosing the appropriate printer driver. So if we look here at the File menu now, you'll notice we have two distinct output device types: output to printer, which also includes lasers, output to engraver, and of course also, if you want to look here, we have two vinyl cutter. In this case, we want to send this job to our engraving machine. So these following instructions apply when using mechanical engravers, such as one of our XOT series engravers or any other mechanical engraver that has been retrofitted with our electronics. This type of engraving typically involves the use of a rotary style cutter or a diamond tip for drag engraving or trophy brass, etc. With this in mind, you may need to refer to your table manual, the Xenetech table manual, in reference to zeroing cutters. Setting the engraving depth, placing the material on the engraving surface, and using the motor speed control. If using a Xenetech engraver, these topics are specifically addressed in your Xenetech engraving table manual. In addition to a cutter, you will need a piece of 2-ply engraving plastic, at least 6 by 6 inches square, and some engraver's tape. And in this case, engraver's tape is what we use to hold down the part. Preparing the engraver. 1. Place a piece of engraving plastic on the engraving surface in the upper left-hand corner of the table. To do this, you should first take and lay 2 or 3 strips of double-sided engraving tape on the T-slot table in the appropriate area. For more information on this tape, check your table manual. Next, install, by the way, on that, you should make sure that the part plastic is perfectly aligned with the top and left margins. If it doesn't appear to want to line up with those then your part is not square. Installing a 0.4 install a 0.040 cutter or a comparable size in your spindle. To avoid possible damage to both the cutter and the spindle, it is important to fully understand the procedure for engraving cutters. Set your initial engraving depth to .012, and of course that's 12/1000ths of an inch. To set that depth, you will click the micrometer 12 clicks, each click being 1/1000th. Next, place your motor speed control switch in the auto position and the motor speed control speed knob to approximately 6 o'clock. If a vacuum chip removal system has been installed, place the accessory switch on the motor speed control to auto, if so equipped. Our larger tables, the one switch for the motor speed control also controls the accessories. Locate the pendant in the motor power unit. On the pendant, place the table start switch in the off position. Place the pause continue switch in the pause condition. Place the cutter switch in the auto position. On the motor power unit, make sure the power switch is turned on. If it is on, the power switch will be illuminated and the fan on the back will be running. The pendant is the switch box or keyboard to the system. The motor power unit is the large box with fan and cable connectors on the back. Refer to the hardware software setup to identify the different parts of the electronic package. Now it's time to send the job to the engraver. Just a reminder, at this point it is assumed that the software has been properly installed, having chosen the correct engraving table type and size. For predictable operation, it is important that all table parameters have been set properly. If you are in doubt, please stop and reinstall the software. Make sure to choose the correct engraver for your application during the initial phase of the software installation. The first step for output it to the engraver would be to select the file menu choice to engraver. To do that, open the file menu, move your mouse to engraver. Notice that F1 is the hotkey and click your left mouse button. At this time, it will open up the engraver setup dialog. The engraver setup dialog, the values shown in the above dialog may not reflect your exact values for your engraver. The value in your dialog are provided correctly upon choosing the correct engraver while installing the software. What we mean by that, things like the X offset and the Y offset are different from one machine to the next. Our largest tables use a 0X and a 0Y offset. The smaller tables use a 1 inch on the Y and a 0 on the X. All these values here are important for the output to the engraver. Z stroke is how far the Z will go up and down while it's engraving. Since we have full automatic cutter set turned on, Z home is not highlighted. Z delay is the time duration the cutter will remain in one location before the machine starts to move. Z down speed is how fast the machine lowers the spindle. This is a baseline number. You can fine tune that with the Z speed knob on the pendant. The Z up speed is also a baseline number for how fast the spindle will come up. That is not controlled by the Z speed knob. It always returns at the set speed. Z float is how far the spindle will travel after the proximity sensor opens. XY speed is how fast the engraver moves with the cutter down. Number of repeats, 1 in this case, tells the system how many copies of the job to run. The other values here will be explained as we go along. Before you go to the OK button, send this to the machine, it always is a good idea to press the mechanical home button on the pendant. This way you know the machine is all at the home position. And when you do this, the X, Y, and Z axis will move back to the respective mechanical home positions, and you will hear a growling noise after each has reached home. At this point, the job is, any job that may have been aborted is canceled. The growling noise you hear is the machine moving away from the limit switch to the predetermined position. At this point, click on the OK button to send the job to the engraver. This job will go transfer quickly. If you watch here on the status line, especially on larger jobs, you'll see it counting off as it goes along. And of course, now we're ready to engrave. And a word of caution, when you press the start button on the table pendant, the machine is going to move. So at this point, press the start button. The engraving head spindle will move to the first character and pause. You should have also heard the spindle motor come on momentarily. Confirm that the spindle appears to be paused over the engraving material in the vicinity of the first character, as you see it on the computer screen. If the spindle is obviously not in the correct position over the material, please contact your distributor or qualified Xenetech service representative before proceeding. Now it's time to engrave, so take the pause continue switch and place it in the continue position. Your machine should now be engraving. The machine should be moving with the cutter down, the spindle motor running. Once a few characters have engraved, take a glance at the depth of the cut. When engraving into 2-ply material, the idea is to engrave deep enough to remove the top layer to expose the contrasting color beneath it. If you see that the depth setting is not removing enough material, not showing the underlying color, carefully rotate the micrometer to the right a few clicks at a time. Our initial setting was 12 thousandths, so try adding 3 thousandths or 3 clicks to end up at 15 thousandths of depth. This can be performed while the machine is in operation. Just do so carefully. Once you have achieved an appropriate depth, we can either back up to the first few characters, or we can retain in home the job and start it over again to re-engrave the whole job at the final depth. Whether you need to re-engrave any characters or not, you may want to try the following procedure for practice. Backing up by character, line, or plate. This feature can be used while the engraver is in motion, or while paused within an engraving job. So if the engraver has finished and returned back to the home position, we will have to restart it to perform this exercise. To recall the last engraved or canceled job, press the home and retain, home and cancel switch towards the home and retain position. The green or ready light will re-illuminate, indicating the job is ready to go again. On the pendant, place your character line and plate switch in the character position. Place the pause and continue switch in the continue position. Press the start table switch. The job will now start re-engraving without pausing at the first character. Allow the engraver to re-engrave the words "my first." As it begins to engrave the letter T in first, place the pause continue switch in the pause position. This will cause the engraver to pause at the P in the word plate. It is important to note that the pause continue is not used to immediately stop the engraver in emergency situations. Use the emergency stop switch instead. Reason for this is the pause switch does not stop until it begins the next character. Now press the backward-forward switch once towards a backward position. Press it again. Notice how the engraver is backing up to the beginning of one character at a time. Now place the character line and plate switch in the line position. Press the backward-forward switch once towards the forward position. This will advance you to the beginning of the second line. Place the character line and plate switch in the character position again. Press the forward-backward switch towards the forward position 2 more times. This will place you on the character I in the word using. By now you should have a basic understanding of how to maneuver from character to character and line to line using the line character plate switch in conjunction with the forward and backward switch. Once you have reached the position you wish to re-engrave, it is just a simple matter of taking the engraver out of pause. To resume engraving, place the pause continue switch in the continue position. Please note, in some instances you may have to press the start table switch. So if you take the machine out of pause and place it in continue and the machine does not start immediately, press the start switch. Outputting to a laser engraver or printer. Both of these output operations use file output to printer to communicate to the respective devices. Xenetech simply passes the on-screen job to the print manager in Windows. Execution at that point is completely controlled by the driver provided by the individual device, laser engraver, printer, whatever. In addition to this tutorial, you will need to have an understanding of the output device through the use of its manuals. To output this job to the laser printer or laser engraver, go to the File menu with your mouse, click, and now move down to Output to Printer. Notice Control O is your hotkey there, and click. You can see this is our print dialog, and there's a lot of information here that allows you to control how the job is printed. To select the printer you want to output to, click on the Print Setup button. You'll notice now that a different dialog is open, and this gives us the chance to select which printer we want to use. Here, under the specific printer, we have a pull down. So if we click here, you can see it brings open a list of different types of printers and lasers that we can use. At this point, you would want to move your mouse down and click on the printer that you want to use. Once you've done that, you can click on the OK button. The OK button then closes the print dialog, print setup dialog, and brings back our main print dialog. To output now to the laser engraver, you would simply click on the OK button. I guess, what did it say?
Anything for keeps or rehearsal. Smile, you're on candid camera.
What do they call multi-job? See if they did it. Or I gotta make one ahead of time. Multi-plate. What is that? Ouch. That thing isn't running, is it?
Yeah.
Why? You
wasting tape, man. I'm just trying to get things lined up here.
That's okay. It doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter.
Or tape over it anyway.
Huh?
We'll tape over it at some point anyway.
It starts with selecting text, but there's nothing on there's no program, so it's, they just want to set something up.
This is for you.
That's for me. Oh shoot, I called him this morning. Where did we leave off? Who did the section before this, do you know?
No. Oh no, my book's across the street.
Alright, so how do you usually start this?
Just say, okay, now we're ready to. I mean, you can just start from the beginning because remember you're going to introduce yourself on camera
Oh, yeah.
later on. Well, not later on, when we actually shoot it, you'll introduce yourself on camera. So you can just start from the beginning, and I'm going to play devil's advocate here. I'll sit and, if I don't understand something you're doing, I'll ask you questions about it. And from there, what we're going to do is write a script based upon what you said and the questions I asked, which will then later on be your script to go from when we do the actual shoot.
You sure you want me in this?
Mm-hmm.
This is not something I do.
Is that right?
It's all right. Listen to you. Okay, so we just go right into the text, is that it?
That's it.
Okay. I don't even know where to start. In programs such as Xenetech, when you're selecting line items to manipulate, there's certain ways to do this. There's several ways that this can be accomplished. The first way is to actually click the mouse right on the line, and it will draw a box around the line of text. This indicates the line is selected. Another way to do it is draw a rubber band box, and that is draw a box around the line of text with the mouse, and that'll select it. If you wanted to select more than one line, you would actually draw a rubber band box around multiple lines of text, 2, 3, or 4 lines. Using the mouse is just one way to select lines of text. After these lines are selected, they can be manipulated. They can be arced, underlined, italicized, change the size of the line of text or the font style. Another way to select a line of text would be under the Edit menu. There's an option called Select All. What this will do is actually select all lines of text to be manipulated. Third way to select lines of text is using the plus and minus keys on the keypad. And by hitting the plus key, the first line of text will be selected. And if you hit it again, the second line, third line, and so on. If you wanted to go the other way by hitting the minus key, it would actually select the last line of text on the screen. Using the mouse to select multiple lines, you can use what's called the shift-click method, and that is select a line of text, hold down the shift key on the keyboard, and select another line of text. And therefore you can select lines of text that are not necessarily next to each other, and they can be manipulated. This is not me, you know that.
You're doing fine, relax.
when you're deleting or undeleting lines of text, they have to be selected. If you were to select one line of text under the Edit menu, you can hit the Delete key. This will delete that line of text. Again, under the Edit menu, if you hit Undelete, it'll bring that line back. You have to remember, if you delete more than one line of text, the lines of text will be stacked on top of each other. So you have to remember that first one in is the last one out. So
No, I
that
don't understand.
you don't understand. Okay.
What do you do?
If you select this line
Uh-huh.
and this line, okay, and go to delete.
Yeah.
Okay, you're deleting two lines of text.
Yeah.
Okay, if you go to undelete, you're just going to undelete one line. That was the last one out, so that's the first one back. They're
Right.
stacked on top of each other. If you go to undelete again, it's going to bring that one back.
Okay. I got you. Cool.
You have to be careful with the lines of text that are deleted, or anything, even logos that are deleted. There's a buffer that fills up with all this information. And if you delete a line of text and go ahead and put something else in its place, or in the same area, like that, and go ahead and bring that line of text back that you deleted earlier and put it right on top of what you just put in. So if you're putting it in the same position, you have to be careful about that. Okay, that's for deleting and undeleting lines, place. That's all I have right there. Now, you've already learned about multiple plates, so what we're going to do is open a job that has multiple plates on it, and we're going to talk about deleting and undeleting multiple lines. Full view, or multiple plates, rather. When deleting plates, or multiple plates, you have to remember that the focus is where those four black dots are on the plate. Whichever plate they're on, it's going to delete the number of plates ahead of that. So in this case, if you were to ask it to, under delete plate, you're going to ask it to delete 5 plates. What it's going to do is delete 5 plates ahead of that. Now, if your focus was somewhere else on the plate, say the focus was here in the center of the group of plates. Yeah, I'll say plate 2. We got to do something about that. If you ask it to delete, say 5 plates from here, under Edit and Delete Plate, delete 5. It's going to delete the 5 in front of that focus point. And here's something you have to be careful of. If your focus was down near the end, within the 5-plate margin, you want to delete 5 plates. What it's going to do is delete the plate that has the focus, the one in front of it, and then there aren't any more after that. So then it's going to back up and delete 3 more behind it. So if these were numbered, be able to see that a lot better. So we'll make something for that.
Is that a phone?
That screen garbage is left behind.
The fact they're all numbered 2.
Whoever set it up. I didn't set it up, I just called it the job. We'll make a job when we do it right. So the number, you'll be able to see the numbers and how it works. Again, in the same manner, you can undelete plates just by clicking undelete. It's going to ask for 5. It's going to put the last 5 you took out. Those are on top of the stack in the delete buffer. So it's going to take the last 5. So if we had numbers here, you'd see which ones they were. Okay, and this can also be used for reordering. We'll bring 5 place. I think that's it. We need something better like that.
Dissolve?
That's it.
See, that wasn't so hard, was it?
It's terrible.
Oh, it's
Give me that.
Give me a break.
Is this the computer we're going to be using?
Possibly. Or one.
You already started?
Yeah, it's rolling. Do you think I may stop you and ask some questions? Just answer them, and we'll use that to formulate a script later on.
Okay, let's just look into the red light here and all that stuff.
No, just
Go
the
ahead.
tape's only so we can hear you talking,
Okay,
so we can look at it later. Go ahead whenever you're ready.
all right. Okay, there are basically two fonts that are available through the use of Xenetech. One is a standard engraving font, and the other is true type fonts. The engraving fonts are designed specifically for that purpose, which means that they're a more efficient font, and they're made up of either a single line or a multiple line design. They have fewer cutter-ups, and they're much more. If you have a job with a large number of plates, you need a more efficient scratch. I'm not saying that correctly. I'm not sure how I want to break into this. On the engraving fonts. Well, basically I want to explain that there's two different kinds of fonts.
You're doing fine. Okay.
Trying to see how Jim said it. Provide quick. Engraving fonts provide for an efficient path, which is actually the path that the engraver is going to take as it's engraving. And these fonts also have fewer cutter-ups, which means every time your spindle has to pick up during a font, that'll add more time to your engraving. Now, there are two different kinds of fonts. You have single-stroke fonts or single-line fonts, and you have multiple-line fonts. A single-line font is similar to, say, a Gothic font. Is just the character is one line wide, basically, and you have one path for that cutter. Now, a multiple-line font would be, say, a Helvetica triple line or Helvetica 6-line font. They take longer to engrave, but you do have the added plus of being able to use a small cutter for these fonts and still achieve larger letter heights. Another plus for multiple line fonts is, say, in a Roman font, is that you can use serifs, and they come out in the font more cleanly, and you get a better effect than you would with a single line font. For example, on a serif, the tips of the letters at the bottom and the top actually curve or flare out from the wider part of the letter. And the only way to truly achieve this effect is to have a multiple line font, like a Helvetica triple line or a Roman 3-line, or a Times Roman. And the second kind of font that we have is a true type font. True type fonts were originally designed for printing purposes, and they're actually made up of two parts. They're made up of an outline filled with a bit image fill. Now this fill basically is made up of tiny dots or squares that fill up the entire letter. What basically Xenetech has done is you can use this font in one of two ways. Either you can use it for printing purposes, which is where you would leave the bit image fill in, or you would basically go into a wireframe mode. Wireframe mode is basically what you do is you have your line of text on the screen, you go up into line group menu, and you come down and you click on wireframe. Wireframe basically turns off this bit image fill, and at that time it displays exactly the way it's going to look whenever you engrave it. Now, this is good for an outline fill for purposes of, say, cutting vinyl or routing out letters, but say that you want the center of the letter to be completely engraved out. At that point, you're going to select the line and make sure that you go up to font menu and you have hatch fill selected. Now, hatch fill can be manipulated in several ways. The main way of manipulating a hatch fill is by cutter size or cutter suggestion down at the bottom of your toolkit. By adjusting your cutter size or cutter suggestion with the line selected, you can separate the hatch fill apart. So say for example you have a 10 thousandths cutter as your default, but it has too many lines or the fill would take too long to engrave. Then at that point what you would do is select the cutter size and increase it to say 30 or 40 thousandths. You'll notice that the lines diminish, or basically you don't have as many lines within that character. You also have another menu that manipulates hatch fill under line group menu. You come down and click on hatch fill setup. You have a dialog box that comes up that has several different options. For a novice user, which you are right now, I'm going to draw attention to some sections that are really more important. And once you get familiar with the software, you can go on to the others. Sort hatch lines is very important even for a novice user, because this is how we generate our true types to be much more efficient. They're still not as efficient as a regular standard engraving font, but they are more efficient than probably the standard defaults for your true type. If you have right now, you're probably set on unidirectional fill. What this means is that you have the lines within the font are all single lines and they all travel in one direction, so that your cutter has to pick up and then go back to, say, the left-hand side and start the next line, instead of simply dropping down to the next line and going in the opposite direction. Now, so what you want to do to have something that's bidirectional, or to move in both directions, is you click on bidirectional. You also have another option that says connect hatch. The connect hatch, what that will do is that will connect all the lines so that you don't have a cutter up between each hatch fill line. If you have connect hatch on, it's much more efficient fill because you don't have the time wasted and a cutter up between each line. Sort. Basically what sort will do is it will sort the sections of fill or the line from the top left-hand corner to the bottom right-hand corner. So you don't have a lot of wasted time with the cutter picking up and traveling to a section that's farther away. You want to engrave the sections that are closest together. As far as your other settings, space between hatch lines, you may not see this on your screen right now. Your cutter suggestion in the toolkit has to be set to 0 in order to set your space between hatch lines. Basically, this is the actual space between your hatch lines. If you have a cutter suggestion in, it basically uses a value of cutter overlap to decide how far apart your lines will be. So if you know exactly how far apart you want your hatch fill, then you would set your cutter suggestion to 0 and go up to space hatch lines and change that to the distance that you've arrived upon. The rest of this menu is more for an advanced user. If you have any questions, you can click on the help button within this dialog. If you have a particular instance and the hatch fill is just not setting up the way you decided, then you can call Xenetech and we can explain to you more detail. Okay, loading an engraving font. To load an engraving font, you go up to the font menu, you come down and you click on Install Resident Font. The hotkey for this is Control F. And then at that time you'll have an item selector dialog come up that should have all the fonts listed in the left-hand box. You need to make sure that you're in the directory xfiles/fmt, because this is where your fonts are located for engraving. Okay, you select the font that you want to use, in this case Clarendon 2-line, and then you take your mouse over and you click on OK. At this point, this has now become one of your resident fonts, which basically what that means is that under font menu, when you click on font, that font is listed. You notice also that that font also now has a hotkey to the right of it. If I want to use Clarendon 2-line, I would hold down the Shift key and press F2. If I want to use Gothic, I would hold down the Shift key and press F1. So what we're going to do at this point is we have a line of text typed out on the screen. you'll notice that whatever font we had a check mark by or selected is a font that it displays now on the screen. If you go back up to font menu and you want to change, say we want to change our line to Gothic, you have to make sure you have the line selected, go up to font menu, and then click on Gothic. Again, the hotkey here would be Shift F1, which we could do simply by just selecting the line and holding down the Shift key and pressing F1 to change fonts. We have another section that's called Special Effects that for manipulating and controlling fonts and logos also. We have, for example, a section that's called Italicize. Any question? When you come down and you click on Italics, what it will do is it will slant the line at the angle we have already chosen in another menu. So to turn italics off and on, we go to the font menu and click on Italic, or we hold down the Control key and press I. Again, the menu where you can go and change that value is under Miscellaneous, and come down and click on Setup. At that point, you have an item that's labeled Italics Angle. The degrees basically are from the vertical position. So if you have 15 degrees or higher than 0, it's going to slant it towards the right. If you use a negative number in this box, say for example -15, it's going to slant it back to the left. We have some other special effects under the font menu also. We have an item that's called Reversed, and we can use Reversed for creating a mirror image. At this point, I'd have some jobs already saved. We could jump back and show the mirror image. Which basically all this does is it shows the mirror image or the reversed image. We also have a feature, it's called Underline. And to turn Underline off and on, again, you go to the font menu, you come down, you click on Underline, or you hold down the Control key and press L. To manipulate or control the distance between the line and the bottom of the characters, you go up to Miscellaneous menu again and come down and click on Setup. You have a percentage in here that's called the underline percentage. The underline percentage is basically a percentage of the letter height added on to the baseline of that line, and that's where the line will be drawn. Say, for example, we have this line on the screen that is 1 inch tall, and we have an underline percentage of 20%. That means that the line will be 0.2 inches below the baseline of the text that we have on the screen. So if you want to manipulate it and move it closer, you would decrease this percentage. If you would like the line further away from the text, then you would increase this percentage. Okay. Another section of this tutorial is bringing in logos on the screen so that we can manipulate them and also generate things such as a plaque. To bring a logo in Xenetech, you would click on L in the icon bar, and then you have an item selector dialog come up. You select the logo that you would like. Notice that the auto preview displays whatever selection you have selected this time. Make sure you're in the correct directory or drive wherever your logo is located. Select it, click on OK, and then you're going to draw a rubber band box by holding down the left-hand mouse key, dragging over to the right and down, and then releasing. Then the logo comes in on the screen. This logo can be sized the same way we size text. We can change baselines, we can change justifications. We can even use our special effects that we had before. We can italicize, we can reverse, and we can underline. So we can even use our features such as plain even space. Everything about this is manipulated exactly like a line of text. And that's about it. And that covers just about everything we went over here. I do have questions about, and it's not real, I don't have like an outline set. I didn't sit down and draw an outline for this. But there are things, for example, I don't know if he wants me to get into the other special effects like arcing and all that, or is someone else doing that? Slanted and arced? And vertical text. He does have vertical text in here, but... Oh, I'm sorry, he does have slanted and arced. Oh. So I guess I need to do that too. If we want to slant a line of text, what we do is we select the line that we want, We go over and we click on the slant angle within the toolkit, and we select the angle that we want. Now, the way Xenetech reads angles is that the horizontal line, which basically at this point we would look at as being the x-axis, and the vertical line, the y-axis, the right half of the x-axis, the end of it is 0 degrees, the top part of the y-axis is 90, and the left-hand side is 180. We've got a graphic for that. Let's see. I'll say that. I know I'll have to find it. We've got a graphic that shows the angles. Anyway, what we can do is, if we want to slant something up at a 45-degree angle, we select slant angle. We type in the value, 45 degrees, and then we go up to font menu and we click on slanted. Notice that the line will slant in the up direction. So that if we want to slant it downward, we can click on slant angle, use our dash key for minus 45 degrees, and it will slant in the down direction. If we want to arc a line of text, first we have to know a few things. First of all, we need to know what our arc radius wants to be. We need to know how we want to arc it. Do we want it to be on the top of the arc or the bottom? And we also need to figure out our letter height. First, let's select an arc radius of 2 inches. Then let's go up to font menu and click on arc. You notice right now this is a bubble up, or a top half of an arc. And the reason why we have this top half of the arc is because our beginning angle was 180 degrees and our ending angle was 0. If I wanted to arc it back in the other direction, what I would simply do is change my beginning angle to minus 180 degrees. And then at that point, go ahead and arc the text. We can also arc things on the left-hand side of an arc or the right-hand side of an arc. Simply, again, by changing our begin and end angles. Say if we had a begin angle of a minus 90 degrees and an end angle of 90 degrees. Arcs on the right-hand side of the circle. Okay.
Why does it move it over like that?
Because it's using that as the center point. Say right now my center point is
Oh, okay.
actually right now, say if I arc it right now, I have an arc Y center of 3 inches. If I came over and I changed my begin angle to 180 degrees and my end angle to 0, and I arc it at that point, what changes the arc Y center? Just the only time it shifts it is if you're on the right hand or left hand side of an arc. But then at that point you can drag it where you need it, or you can use arc Y center to control where it is. Okay, we also have vertical text. Vertical text basically does exactly what it states it does. You select the line, type it out on the screen, you go up to the font menu and come down and you click on vertical text. And at that point, the letters are stacked one on top of another. If you like to control the spacing in between these, actually I'm not sure that does that. No, never mind. That's right, that's something that we can ask Jay if we can do that, it's not going to do that. So at this point you have a vertical line of text. At that point, I think that's everything. Any... One thing that I meant to do and I didn't do was the order of things.
What do you mean?
True type. It's kind of like I introduce some grading fonts and then I jump into true type. And I feel like I ought to go and at least show you how to install that's what I need to do. I need to put how to install the resident font.
There's not another section on that somewhere in the...
Well, there is. You cover it basically after you cover true type fonts.
Oh.
I have to explain what a true type font does.
But you can reorder it if you want.
I explained that. Let's see if I did everything on the logos correct. So we have that. And he just mentions that you can do things like slant logos and all that too, so I didn't cover that either.
All right.
Wait, did I cover it or didn't I cover it?
What's that?
Maybe talking about how you can slant logos.
You talked about it. I don't know if you went over it.
You can also, you can slant logos just as if you, yeah, I did go over it. I don't want to go over it.
Okay.